auch gesprochen, die für die Zukunft der NATO wichtig sind. Und das Signal war eins der Gemeinsamkeit. Deshalb bin ich auch sehr zufrieden.
Well, yes, I would agree that we had a very successful meeting indeed on this occasion, the 70th anniversary of NATO. We discussed a number of strategies that are very important to secure the future of this alliance, and it was a very constructive debate that we had, and this is why I'm also very satisfied with the meeting.
Jetzt besprechen wir die bilateralen Dinge.
And now we shall talk about bilateral issues.
That's right. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Can we ask you about the Erdogan meeting, sir?
Yeah, we had a meeting with,
Did you discuss with him the NATO?
I discussed with him everything. We discussed a lot. We had a meeting unscheduled, but we've already put out a notice. It was a very good meeting, I think. We discussed Syria. We discussed the Kurds. We discussed numerous things, and we're getting along very well. The border and the safe zone is working out very well. And I give a lot of credit to Turkey for that. The ceasefire is holding very much so, and I think people are surprised. And maybe someday they'll give me credit, but probably not. But it worked out well. They've been trying to do this for 100 years. That border is a mess for a long time. We pulled our soldiers out. We took over the oil. We have soldiers where the oil is. That's the way I like it. And they can police their own border, and that's what they're doing. They can use other countries if they want to spend the time and energy they can do. But this is a border that's been under siege for many, many decades. And it was time for us to leave, and we left, and it's been holding very nicely, so we're very happy. We talked about that.
And are they committed to protecting NATO commitment to protect the Baltics and Poland?
Oh yeah, they've been very good. I think that, frankly, a lot of people pay great respect to Turkey for the work that they've done. And we had a number of mentions where they were mentioned specifically. Now they've been doing a good job, and they've been doing a good job also on the border and the safe zone. And they have held, I mean, obviously there were some skirmishes that's been around for a long time, but the ceasefire has held very, very well.
Mr. President, can you explain why your personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, would need to talk to the budget office?
I really don't know. You'd have to ask him. Sounds like something that's not so complicated, frankly, but you'd have to ask him. No big deal.
Mr. President, Germany has welcomed 6 more countries into INSPEX, making it 9 countries now that are circumventing U.S. sanctions against Iran. Have you talked about that with the Chancellor?
No, but we will.
Yeah. What would you say?
I haven't. I'm not going to say what I'm going to say, but we will be talking about it. We'll be talking about a number of things. We'll have a good meeting.
President, will you put sanctions on Nord Stream 2? Will the U.S. put sanctions?
Say it again?
Will the U.S. put sanctions on Nord Stream 2?
Well, we haven't really determined that yet. I do think it's a problem, but it's a problem that Germany's going to have to work out for themselves. Maybe for Germany it won't be a problem. I hope it's not, actually, but we'll be talking about that. Nord Stream.
Mr. President, what did you respond to President Putin's offer on a moratorium for medium-range missile systems, which we made in the end of October?
We're talking to Russia about many things, including a cessation on nuclear and nuclear creation. It's, in my opinion, the biggest problem the world has today. I think it's bigger than any other problem the world has today, and we're working very hard on it. And he wants to see something happen, and so do I, and so does China.
Mr. President, do you talk about trade issues with Europe as well?
We're going to be talking about everything. Yeah, trade is very important. Germany is a very big trading partner, but it's been really the European Union. And we've been discussing it for quite a while. It's been a little tough for the United States. We've had a very bad imbalance for many, many years, for decades actually, and we're discussing that right now. So I think we'll come. I think we'll come to a satisfactory conclusion.
Ich denke, dass durch die Arbeitsaufnahme der neuen Kommission und auch der neuen Kommissionspräsidentin wir auch einen guten Punkt haben, mit den Handelsgesprächen wieder voranzukommen.
I think that the fact that there is a new commission in place and also under the leadership of a new president of the European Commission, that now we have a very good basis to resume our trade talks again.
Meetings have been set up, and we'll talk, and I believe that it will work out very well for everybody, and I think it should. We have some very tough barriers to get over. They've created barriers, as Angela knows very well, and making it very hard for the United States really to openly trade, and that can't be done. And so we're going to be talking about that and other things. I think we will solve it. We do a lot of business, but they do much more business than us. And we're gonna change it. I've been saying this for the last 6 months, for the last year, and we've made progress, but we will make a lot of progress. And we just want fairness. We have to have fairness in trade, and not only with the EU, but with many other countries. We're talking to China, as you know. Those discussions are going very well, and we'll see what happens. But we're talking to China. We're talking to others. We made a deal with South Korea. We made a deal with Japan. The Japan deal is a partial deal. The rest will come next year. But we've made already many deals. We're looking, the big deal is the USMCA with Canada, Mexico. And Nancy Pelosi has to get that approved. She has to put it out for a vote. She doesn't have to talk to anybody. She doesn't have to talk to any of her Democrats because they'll approve it. And their constituents want it approved very badly. So that's where we are. We've made a lot of deals. And this is a deal I think that's going to be, the EU is actually one of the more difficult deals we have because it's gone on for a long time unchecked, but it'll get there, I'm sure.
Have you had the deal of Prime Minister Trudeau talking about you last night?
Well, he's too fast.
Do you think that Germany is too naive?
And honestly, with Trudeau, he's a nice guy. I find him to be a very nice guy. But you know, the truth is that I called him out on the fact that he's not paying 2%. And I guess he's not very happy about it. I mean, you were there, a couple of you were there, and he's not paying 2%, and he should be paying 2%. It's Canada, they have money, and they should be paying 2%. So I called him out on that, and I'm sure he wasn't happy about it, but that's the way it is. Look, I'm representing the U.S., and he should be paying more than he's paying, and he understands that. So I can imagine he's not that happy, but that's the way it is.
Mr. President, where are you in terms of persuading other allies in terms of allowing China to build 5G networks?
Well, I'm not working very hard on that, but I do think it's a security risk, it's a security danger, and I spoke to Italy, and they look like they're not going to go forward with that. We spoke to other countries, they're not going to go forward. Everybody I've spoken to is not going forward. But how many countries can I speak to? Am I going to call up and speak to the whole world? It is a security risk, in my opinion, in our opinion. We're building it, and we've started, but we're not using Huawei.
Will you tax Germany for not paying enough in terms of defense spending?
Well, Germany's a little bit under the limit, I will say that, but we'll talk about that now. Hey, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. I think what we'll do, just for purposes of this, we'll be having a meeting with the 2% people, and we're having another meeting with Denmark, and then we'll probably go directly back to Washington.
Will you address Greenland?
Because I can't imagine, will we discuss Greenland? What do you think? Tell me. That's a good, she must be in the real estate business. That's a very good question. So we'll go directly back. I think we've done plenty of press conferences. Unless you're demanding a press conference, we'll do one, but I think we've answered plenty of questions. And again, let me just finish by saying we've had a tremendous 2 days. I think NATO is stronger than it's ever been. A lot more money is being produced by a lot of countries, and they're enthusiastic about it. And within 3 years, you're going to be talking about committed to $400 billion more, and not by the United States, by other countries. So it's been very successful today, and there's great spirit. Okay? Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, you're watching breaking news here. President Trump speaking alongside German Chancellor Angela Merkel. Back here on MSNBC, our live coverage continues with Joe, Willie, Jonathan Lemire. Presidential candidate Cory Booker is at the table, along with former Senator Claire McCaskill, and David Ignatius is with us as well. And Joe, among the word salad that the president was putting out there in the past 10 minutes, he talked about his unscheduled meeting with Turkey's Erdogan, saying it was a very good meeting. He talked about the trade situation, He talked about NATO, and that's where it got a little jarring, calling Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau two-faced. He said he was two-faced, and then 3 seconds later, he said he was a nice guy, which I guess you could call that two-faced, because can you be two-faced and a nice guy? I don't know. But it's jarring to see an American president insulting people on the world stage, sitting right next to the Chancellor of Germany. The president now says they will talk behind the scenes and talk about Germany paying up as it pertains to NATO. Let's get a sound up. Can we hear Joe? All right, David Ignatius, I'll go to you. Your gut on what you just heard from the President of the United States.
Mika, for the most part, President Trump was fairly low key. He did have that striking comment about the Canadian Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau calling him two-faced. I thought the strange thing that occurred was his characterization of NATO almost as a piggy bank. The only thing he seems to really care about is how much people are paying in, what the substance of the alliance is, the solidarity, the credibility of its commitments doesn't seem to come up. He made a little news in his very positive comments about his conversations unscheduled with President Erdogan of Turkey. Very positive, everything's going great, the ceasefire's holding at a time when there's a lot of criticism of Turkey. That was noteworthy. The other thing that caught my ear, Nika, was his reference in answer to a question if I understood him, a question of arms control negotiations with Russia and perhaps also with China on intermediate range missiles. The treaty that limits those has expired, and there's been a very interesting question whether the U.S. would move toward new arms control discussions with Russia and perhaps China to address that. I thought I heard the president say that he was interested in that. If so, that might be the most interesting thing that we heard.
And Joe, he did say that was one of the most pressing issues facing this country.
He did. I thought the rap was pretty fascinating. Willie, for those of us who have long been strong supporters of the North Atlantic Alliance, of the NATO alliance, I mean, we now have a formula for ensuring that Donald Trump will not work actively to undermine it, and that is have Macron go out a week earlier and criticize the alliance. I was writing down these words at the end where Donald Trump is summing up a summit where world leaders were mocking him and laughing at him last night in Buckingham Palace. He said, "We've had a tremendous 2 days. NATO is stronger than it has ever been. It's been a very successful summit with great spirit." So the president is determined, even if he's being mocked by world leaders on camera, is determined to go home and declare this NATO summit a success.
Yeah, because President Macron criticized it, and yesterday Donald Trump became the great defender of NATO, which spun a lot of heads. And Senator Booker, I would just ask you about this view of the world from President Trump, and specifically the view of NATO as sort of a financial transaction. We keep hearing about the 2% threshold that was agreed to in 2014. That seems to be the litmus test of how he feels about you, not just as a leader, but as a nation. Are you paying enough to be a part of this organization that has been a safeguard in the world for generations?
Well, first of all, he radically misconceives exactly what that is. This is not them paying to some common piggy bank, as words that were used. But more than that, we are literally on the Foreign Relations Committee, I travel a lot and meet with world leaders, and to see their fears and their concerns about, he calls it America first. This is really America isolated, America alone, America pulling away from alliances, international agreements, Paris Climate Accords. Understanding that we are the indispensable nation, and to have a president who so distorts who our friends are and who our enemies, has a better relationship with Putin than he does with Macron or Merkel, is problematic. And look, before Ambassador Yovanovitch was a household name, I was sitting with her in a basement bunker, our military meeting with a Ukrainian military. And when our military leaders and Senator McCaskill knows
Claire.
it. Claire knows it. I feel like I'm at the caucus lunch, sitting next to her, and she's making fun of my vegan food.
True, all true. Where's the meat?
But you literally have our military leaders calling what's going on with Russia right now a hybrid war. This was the terminology I learned when I was first traveling on the Foreign Relations Committee, that NATO's urgency right now, with the Russians now intervening in Latvia, Lithuania, Estonians, elections, heck, the New York Times had a great expose about how they're perfecting this in places like Madagascar and how to undermine Western democracies and free societies. NATO's urgency in this moment on the world stage, with climate crises coming, with things like Syria, with the challenges that we're facing with Russian aggression in Ukraine, and the challenges of Western democracy we're seeing in Hungary or even Turkey, their behavior of recent. This is a very problematic thing, that you have a president that not only doesn't seem to even understand NATO's critical role, but on the world stage just insulted, called the leader of Canada our most essential ally, who's been there with us in every conflict since 9/11, standing in partnership with us in so many ways, to just throw out a schoolyard taunt or punch like that was a moment that they still stun me when I hear our president do that.
And that comment, Senator, as you know, was in response to a question about some video that's been out there this morning of world leaders, including Prime Minister Trudeau and Prime Minister Boris Johnson and President Macron of France, sort of circled up, and it appears that they're making fun of President Trump. Put that together with the way we've seen some of these leaders push back on President Trump at this NATO summit. What picture does it paint of where we are in the world right now?
America right now cannot be trusted. Our allies do no longer trust us. It is weakening the fabric of democracies at a time that the planet Earth is seeing the rise of totalitarianism, authoritarian governments. As I mentioned, from Hungary to, heck, when I went down to meet with Jeff Flake, we flew down to meet with the new leader of Zimbabwe, Emerson Mnangagwa, to be hard with him, talk about American sanctions. He was landing from China at a time where he was saying that Chinese don't care what I do, free and fair elections, humanitarian rights. There's a global conflict going on between our form of government and the authoritarian government. And this president seems to be weakening Western and democratic alliances and playing into the very playbook that the Russians are trying to use to undermine us. And this is problematic. And by the way, Senator, you know this, Republicans know this. When I'm sitting around with my Republican colleagues on the Foreign Relations Committee, they know what's going on. And this is what frustrates me, even about this impeachment proceedings right now. I don't argue with me that this is not impeachable behavior, but don't tell me that this is not moral vandalism going on from the White House, where a president's using taxpayer dollars to hold hostage a country until they do what his political bidding is. Nobody can defend the behavior. You can argue whether it's impeachable or not, but we are in a crisis in our country right now that we're pulling back from the world stage and we're violating our values.
Right. All right, Senator, so I'm going to get back. Let's get back to what we just saw in a minute. But I want to ask you, obviously, about the big news from the campaign trail yesterday about Kamala Harris, your colleague, getting out of the race. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's problematic to me. And frankly, it just wasn't a good day. When I'm hearing from my own family members, black women in my family, that, wait, I don't understand this. That you see people in this race who legitimately do not have the kind of pathway that she still had to compete in Iowa, that she's exiting the race, and we're going to see potentially a debate stage with, right now, only 6 people qualified. All of them are white. When we won our last election, the last big presidential record turnout, massive Obama coalition, came because the fullness of the Democratic Party came out, including almost 1 million more African-American votes in 2012 than in 2016. We lost Michigan, we lost Wisconsin, we lost Pennsylvania. If African-American vote had been nearly what it was in 2012, we would be talking about President Hillary Clinton right now. And so to be in this race right now, I tell you, if anything, I got calls from civil rights leaders yesterday, Congressional Black Caucus leaders yesterday, telling me to fight on, because we know that the debate stage, the rules that they're using, when I'm number 3 in net favorability in Iowa, when I lead in Iowa, New Hampshire, and local endorsements, when we have by the Des Moines Register the best, one of the 2 best organizations on the ground, and to have artificial means to keep folks in my voice out of this race? No way. I'm fighting harder now than ever before because I think I have the best chance of resurrecting that coalition that had us have record turnouts in the past.
So talk about your frustration, and by the way, we've mentioned it already today. It's a frustration that Barack and Michelle Obama felt in early fall of 2007. That you were talking about right now, no black leaders on the stage for the next debate. Of course, that's decided in part by polls and polls that are showing that right now, for whatever reason, black voters, especially older black voters, are gravitating to Joe Biden predominantly. Kamala was never able to break through that support. Obama did, of course, President Obama did later in 2007.
Exactly.
But what do you have to do? How frustrating is it for you, first of all? But secondly, what do you have to do to break through and get the sort of support you need from black, and not only black leaders, but older black voters, younger black voters, that will get you on that next debate stage?
So 2 quick answers. First and foremost, if we were allowing the past to influence what our decisions are now, we would not be putting so much stock in polls, because never in the lifetime of any of us here has there ever been someone who's leading in the polls here in December that has gone on to the White House in the Democratic Party. Never. Carter at 1% around now, Clinton around 4%, Barack Obama 20 points behind Secretary Clinton at this point in the campaign, and losing to her in South Carolina until he showed. So for us, it's very simple. We are running the kind of race with the ingredients that help people like Kerry go on from 4% in December to winning in Iowa. We have what it takes, but right now we just need help. If this is going to be a new barrier that the DNC is going to put up, we need people to go out there and go to CoryBooker.com and contribute so we can run the kind of ads you're seeing from the billionaires in this race that are bumping up their numbers. We need folks to go to CoryBooker.com and keep my voice in this race. And here's the interesting thing.
You talked about...
I want to make sure you got that.
Yeah, I think he said CoryBooker.com. Was it CoryBooker.com?
It was. Thank you, John.
Okay, very good. So we got that out of the way. So you brought up billionaires. Talk about your emotions. Talk about the emotions of your supporters, the feelings of your supporters, the concerns of your supporters, that you have been working so hard around the clock. Your people have been working so hard around the clock. We've talked about how you're doing the blocking and tackling right. You're building organizations correctly. And Mike Bloomberg comes in at the last minute. And I know that had to play into Kamala's decision, because here's a guy that can just blanket California on Super Tuesday with ads. Does something need to be done to stop billionaires from being able to come into a race and just basically helicopter into a race after everybody else has been fighting for a year, and write a $40 million check and start moving up in the polls?
Look, I have very strong feelings on campaign finance. What I've seen in Washington the time I've been there, I would invite Claire to comment on this, is the money in politics right now is so corrosive. People on both sides of the aisle understand this. We've got to change this system, or else we're going to be moving working class people out of politics altogether, and it's going to be an area for millionaires and billionaires. But the backlash, you don't need to go to my supporters. Go to Iowa right now and see what from the media, the head of the Iowa starting line just wrote out a message saying, if you're called by a pollster, no matter who you're supporting at this point, or if you're undecided, choose Cory Booker, because he deserves to be on that stage as much or more than people that are on that stage who don't have the same level of a campaign that I have in that state. So if you're starting to see the backlash from Iowa media and Iowans themselves saying this is getting kind of ridiculous, we should be choosing who goes on out of the Iowa primary, not artificial barriers or how many millions you have in your personal bank account. And so that is a little frustrating. This was a point that John Kerry lent his campaign $5 million and then went on to win. I do not have $5 million. I made a decision coming out of law school to move to the lowest income area and be a nonprofit lawyer as I started my career. So I don't have those personal millions to sustain. And by the way, if Kamala did, she said she was about $5 million short, if I have that correct. She would still be competing in Iowa right now. And by the way, her voice, whatever you think, I'm in this race because I think I'm a better choice than her, but my sister, her voice, she was bringing things to the table bringing up issues that the Democratic Party will be woefully lacking. Julian Castro bringing things to the table, bringing things to this debate that in a party that desperately needs Black and Latino voters, and the move. When I was hearing from my female family members who felt some kind of way yesterday, we have a problem right now in the Democratic Party, and my key is I'm in this to beat Donald Trump. And we need, and I love sitting here next to Claire because she represents where the Democratic Party is. We won back the House of Representatives because of the broadness of our party, because we had people like Mikey Sherrill, people who can appeal to moderates in this race. If we don't have voices that can unite the wholeness of our party to make us a bigger tent, and this is why I have a lot of love for Claire, because I've heard her go off in private in caucus meetings. The Democratic Party's end should not be to beat Republicans. Our end should be to unite Americans in common cause. That's the next leader we need for this country, somebody who begins to heal this nation. And I worry about the way politics runs right now, that the people like Claire and others that I know are not finding a way to get to the table. And so yesterday was not a happy day for me. When we need leaders in this country that can call to all of us, our common cause and our common spirit, because we got common pain right now, but we've got to get back to a sense of common purpose.
What he just said is correct. If people that are running for president on the Democrat side are running primarily just to beat Trump, they're already started out with the wrong momentum and the wrong motive to begin with. Because the primary purpose for running for president is to give the American people a new vision, a new ideal, a new hope that ultimately will be the betterment of the good for all the people and not just a certain sector of them. And that's what we've run into towards this climaxing in political politics, to the point that it has become stagnant to the degree that once you get up there, if you do win in office because you've taken all this money from this group or all this money from this rich guy, now you've got to fulfill your obligations with the rich group or the rich guy more so than fulfilling the obligations of we the people. And that is what has corrupted our political democracy here in America, because there's been too much favoritism in one side or the other. That was favoritism towards the rich, the powerful, and the elite. Something obviously has went wrong with our political parties in the magnitude and in the degree that we're now facing off on a $23 trillion deficit, and there's over 2.3 million incarcerated prisoners in this country presently as I speak. Something obviously has went entirely wrong for this country to have went just the very opposite, backwards, towards peace and prosperity and utopia. The only peace is those who have been receiving big fat checks for the past 25 or 30 years that have big fat bank accounts that now are basically lifelong taken care of, regardless of what happens to their careers tomorrow. They're still taken care of because they have literally drained the system. Too many people with too many self-imposing ideals towards wanting to take care of themselves more so than taking care of the people, the big party, sitting at the table. That's what he just got through explaining. And for Donald Trump to be mocked and laughed at yesterday or last night during the meetings across the pond is more clarity of where we stand in the eyes of the world competitiveness of society, which is not good, if you ask me. This is only my opinion. My opinion don't cost nothing. But whenever you have world leaders that is mocking our leader, world leaders that are laughing at our leader, this is not good, in my opinion. I don't know exactly what was said. I don't know exactly the content of whatever the conversation or whatever the confrontation was about that made other world leaders basically mock Donald Trump yesterday or last night. But it doesn't matter, because whenever you step up to the plate towards confining with other major diplomats representing their nations in other parts of the world, this is a very, very serious matter. We're not talking about Saturday Night Live here. We're not talking about going down here to the comedy strip and getting a good laugh over because you just need to unwind. No, we're talking about a group of individuals that are very, very focused and very, very sincere in what they think and why they're thinking the way that they're thinking, because they want to take care of their people too as well. So the competition becomes very, very intense, very steep whenever you're talking about negotiating with world affairs. The summit meetings need to be addressed in a positive way and not a negative way regarding not just the Americans, but the world. But more so of the Americans because of what has occurred in the past. One thing that I do agree with what Donald Trump has said again and again and again, especially to the China diplomats, is that for the past 3 or 4 administrations is what has gotten America in the shape that America is in right now. Not just the Obamas, not just the Bushes, not just the Clintons, but Mr. Senior Bush, as well as the Reagans. Between the combination of all of it, it has led us down a road of disaster, catastrophe. It has led us down a road of an Achilles heel, of being this far in debt. Now that, I do agree with what Donald Trump has spoken openly and publicly in front of the big mic. That I do agree with. But yet now you don't see the Clintons giving into some sort of a non-profit in the way that you would think that they would be given into. You don't see the Reagan administration or the Bush administration that is worth billions of dollars. You don't see them bending over backwards towards wanting to take care of the world and take care of the people, especially the people here in America. Who are they taking care of? They're taking care of themselves. It's kind of like Dick Cheney going into office only being valued at $3 million, and whenever he walks out, he's worth over $40 million. How do you make $40 million working for the American people? And you only get paid $250,000 a year, and he was only in there for 8 years, 2 terms. How do you have a bank account that's $3 million, and then you leave, and it's worth over $40 million, pertaining to Halliburton? That's exactly what happened. And there's different people that support different pockets, and in these pockets, those people are doing just fine. They're doing great. Some of them have lifelong careers. And whenever they're all said and done with, they'll be set for life in these various pockets. But what about the rest of the people? What about the people that wasn't in those pockets? What about the people that wasn't in those committees or in those organizations like Halliburton? I'm just going to use Halliburton for a example. I'm going to tell you what happened to them. They got sifted down the cracks. Just like in 2008, whenever the bubble burst hit right here in this area. That was during a time that I was having to scrunge for work myself because I had already quit collision specialist down in Jackson in 2005. And of course, Hurricane Katrina hit in the latter fall of 2005, and I had an opportunity of working the Katrina damage with all kinds of work, more work than what could ever be done in basically a 2 to 5 year term. Not just work on cars, but work on homes too, residential and commercial. All kinds of work after that big hurricane hit. But I was having to get out here and jump from pillar to post, go from one state to another state, depending upon the catastrophe that was hitting, regardless whether it was a major tornado or a major hurricane in various spots, just to be able to survive during that era whenever everything went to pieces during the 2008 flop that basically caused a lot of people to lose their homes, to lose their cars, to lose their jobs, to lose their relationships. And a lot of those people to this day are still living under bridges and living on various streets down in Florida and out in California because of that. The bubble burst. They call it the bubble burst. The 2008 bubble burst. Well, during which time that the bubble burst happened, those who was in secured positions, such as judges, sheriffs, DAs, anybody working for the state, continued to make the money that they was making and continued to get the raises that they was promised to get during the time that they was supposed to have gotten them. So now you have a struggling society since 2008. Of course, keep in mind, 2001 was a big upset in various degrees whenever we got attacked, and so much fear went rampant throughout the land pertaining to the 9/11 occurrence. But from 2008, which is basically 10 years ago, the fat cats continued to get fat. They went from $60,000 a year to $62,000 a year to $65,000 a year to $67,000 a year. It escalated to the point that now those same fat cats that are in those same positions are now making $75,000 and $80,000 a year. And we're talking about county. We're talking about on the lower state income people. They're still making their good money. They're still building in their 401ks. They're still advancing towards putting their children in college and having that secondary home somewhere, that vacation home somewhere. They're still advancing towards being able to drive nicer cars, live in nicer homes, and a lot of them has yachts and big boats and private airplanes because of how the system kept them fed. In the meantime, they diminished on our safety, security issues, not just with the rampant shootings that went all over America. There for a while that was just totally out of control. But also they have failed us in the regard towards taking care of now our personal 401ks, in the regard towards people being able to come in and hack us and steal our identity. And they have offered us all these YouTube, Twitter platforms, Facebook platforms, that now has turned into nothing more than an entrapment for the American people. Because the information that you put out there, you can't retract it. You can't take it back. And now it's out there floating around in cyberspace, going from one satellite to another. In the meantime, we have rootless people overseas, North Korea, China, other parts of the world, that are steadily looking at all this and gaining information off of the weakness of the American people. So what we have here is a cesspool of the rich, the 99 percenters that are continually getting poor, but the 1 percenters that has fed off of the system, that has fed off of the 99 percenters. And what even adds insult to misery, I believe, is that they actually have the mendacity that they're going to continue to pass this beast of burden down to our children and our children's children, towards them having to pay for this $23+ trillion in debt that we're soon to be under, if we, the people, don't stand up and do something about it. That's the reason why that I personally believe the only alternative is to default on the $23 trillion and try to realign not just our alliances, but try to realign our finance programs to the point that we can all benefit, and not just a certain group, not just a certain committee, not just a certain organization like Halliburton, but we can all take a sigh of relief and have an opportunity or a chance for our next generation of children that are growing up to have a good life too as well. Because what has happened here has been nothing more than a travesty. Like I said, during the time that the bubble burst actually occurred, the bankers were still making good money, the lawyers were still making good money, the judges were still making good money, the DEA, the prosecuting attorneys, anybody associated with the system was still making good, decent money. All on the sweat and the backs of the American tax-paying people. And now, put us 10 years from what happened then, where we are today. It's actually over 10 years. Soon it will be 2020. Now, they have no enchanting ideals towards what to do, other than to continue to bleed the system and continue to hurt the innocent lives of so many innocent people that didn't have a damn thing to do with a $23 trillion upside down international debt. And these people call themselves moral, that has allowed for this to happen? These are your 21st century barbarians. Who was it that said that the pen is more mightier than the sword? The pen has been the very thing that has corrupted this nation, not the sword. If we would have stuck with the sword may have fought its way through these battles to the point that we would still be on top. But because we relied upon the pen versus the sword, Now we're all in the red. Oh, some of us that has decent jobs, it's hooked up with the system, partially shows favor towards people's 401ks. But you know as well as I do, at a drop of a hat, that could be destructive in so many different ways that it's not even funny, pertaining to that particular promise collapsing upon itself. You don't have to be an Einstein to figure out that that is not a guarantee thing pertaining to the stock market and what's going on right now in people's 401ks. It looks good today. Today it looks good. But a major calamity could occur. And within the next 6 months from now, the very same people that thought that they was on top of the mountain, and don't say that it can't happen, because it happened to those people in 2008. They thought that they was sitting on top of the mountain. They thought that they was fixing to retire with good benefits, with good pensions. And those very same people had to resort towards going and working in places like Walmart, towards being a door greeter, sticking little smiley faces on people's shirts saying, "Welcome to Walmart." Because they thought that they could put faith in the system. But the system collapsed. And whenever the system collapsed, it drained a lot of people into that same system. Why the rich, the scammers, the bamboozlers went from having just a regular boat to now they got a big sailboat or even a big luxury boat sitting down at the docks of Florida somewhere, that once a year they go down there and enjoy themselves, or maybe 2 or 3 times a year. And it costs about $2,000 or $3,000, maybe $4,000 to fill the boat up full of fuel. That way they can ride around and beat themselves on the chest, acting like that they're the king of the world, because they was at the right place at the right time, doing the right thing. Some of the most corrupt, barbarian people live in these chambers of profiteering off of the sweat and backs of the American people. And until the American people wake up and realize that they have been bamboozled, and that there is no other way, there is no way to fix this problem other than to erase it, back up, and start all over again, like the little farmer that planted the crop and only about half of it come up. He had 2 choices. He could either live with what he already had, or go in and disc and plow it all under and replant and hope for a better crop the next time. That's basically where we are today in society, in the political arenas, that is draining, hurting so many innocent lives. And I'm sure that I'll have controversy in the statement that I'm making and the subject that I'm on right now, that will go as easy one way as it will the other. The people who have seen this, that have went through this, that have experienced this, and know that what I'm talking about is true, will say, yes, this man is what he's talking about is correct. But on the same level, there'll be people like Tommy Moore, the judge, or the DA, or Tommy Thomas, those that have steadily got increases in their pay for the past 10 years from $60,000, now they're up to $80,000 a year. People like Mike Wilson that'll tell you, oh no, this man's crazy. This man don't know what he's talking about, pertaining to the rich getting richer. Once more, they have become the 1%ers. They drive nicer cars. They live in nicer homes. They have bigger bank accounts. They have all kinds of lavish things to brag about. And how these people can rest good at night and look at the mirror and say that they've done a good job is still beyond me. Because of all the violence and all the corruption that has befallen upon to the country, because of all the people that has resorted to crime, of the jails being as full as what they are, how these people can continue to look in the mirror and say, oh, I'm a good person. I'm a good, upstanding person to the neighborhood. I'm a pillar of society, is what they say. No, what you are is a low down, stinking, no good for nothing rat. You're a douchebag, is what you are. Because while you was feeding yourself and those around you pertaining to your high income brackets, you sat back and you watched other people suffer and do without. And you sat back and took advantage of this situation to the point that the lawyers continue to make their money. The judges continue to make their money. Must I go on? Must I go on with a country that just got through acknowledging the laughter or the mockery of other countries towards our leader, Donald J. Trump? Good luck to all of us is our memento, and will continue to be our memento coming into 2020. Good luck to all of us, because what has happened here pertaining to this travesty has went beyond anything that I think our founders, our original framers, who brought this country together in the ideal of a dream, in the ideal of hope, in the ideal that the goats could live beside the sheep, or the sheep beside the goats. An ideal that we didn't have to be dictated to by these tyrants, by these oligarchs. And now the very ideal that our founders created have been corrupted, have been stained, have been compromised on. And they walk around and they'll tell you, oh no, what this man's talking about isn't right. Oh no, what this man's talking about isn't true. I think there's too many Americans that know what I'm talking about is true. I think it's reached a point now that it's undeniable of what has occurred here in the past 30 years since Ronald Reagan stood up and told the old Yugoslavia, the old USSR, tear down that wall. While they was tearing down their wall, people over here was building their walls. And they built these walls to protect themselves and to protect their families and to protect their institutions. Kind of like Dick Cheney, that went in, valued at $3 million, but left valued at over 40. Have a good day. Good luck to all of us. And once more, shalom. Sorry about the phone moving.